Hello， 大家好，我是盘子。接着上期癌症痊愈的视频，我们接着讨论为什么我要一直用安妮塔的经历举例子呢？我认为人的意念和思维模式是能对身体造成影响的。正面的思维如果对癌细胞都能修复正常的话，那更别说焦虑症了。所以我一直拿安妮塔的例子来鼓励大家。焦虑症的人多半呢都有疑病症，包括我自己也是。在躯体症状消失的很长的一段时间里面呢，从心理层面上面其实还没有完全归正，身上稍微有点不舒服就总是会负面的解读。这些问题的背后还是因为过度的担心。其实担心与外在发生的事情无关，往深了看只与自己内在的心智有关。担心所反映的是人内在的执着和缺少安全感。过度担心就会形成恐惧，只要把恐惧的问题解决了，心理状态自然就会归正。现在康复后再回过头去看那段日子我悟到这种强烈的恐惧感其实是身体向你发出的求救信号，是对爱的呼求，呼求你要学会正确的爱自己。当你感到害怕时，首先不要去评判这种感觉，如果你去定义这种感觉就会越来越恐惧，紧跟着各种各样紧张的负面的思维就像洪水决堤一样淹没你的理性。
What I really wanted to talk about is a topic that comes up again and again, which is the topic of fear. And many of you are feeling fear about different things. You're feeling fear about the state of the planet, feeling fear about things that are going on in the world. You're also feeling fear about health challenges. So I want to speak about the different types of fear and how to transcend it. So the first thing I want to say is that when you're feeling fear, don't judge the fear. Because many of us, because we believe that fear is unhealthy, we then start to fear the fear. We say, oh my God, I'm feeling fear. Is it going to attract more fear? Is it going to attract more bad stuff into my life? Is it going to attract cancer? Is it going to be bad for my immune system because I'm feeling fear? Then you start fearing the fear and then you compound it. So here's what I want you to do. When you feel fear, just accept it, give yourself a hug and say, I hear you, and just give yourself a nice tight hug. And when you feel fear, it's an invitation calling you to love yourself more. So how do you do that? That's what I'm going to address next, is how do you then transcend this fear to love? So first thing is accept it, don't judge it. You can only transcend things to love when you accept them, when you accept what is, not when you judge it. Because when we judge things, we suppress them. When we suppress them, we're saying it's wrong, it's bad. It means we're judging a part of ourself. It means we're not accepting who we are, which is not a loving thing. So the first loving act is to accept every part of you, including your fear. The second part is to ask yourself, what is the fear telling you? So, for example, if you are dealing with a health challenge, if you're dealing with an illness, usually an illness is your body's way of telling you that you're not living your life on purpose. You're not being who you came here to be. And when we're not being who we came here to be, in other words, when we start to dim our light, when we stop finding our joy, when we stop feeling joy in our life, when we're starting to do what everyone else wants us to do, when we believe that we have to meet expectations as opposed to follow our own heart, that's when we start to feel constricted, and then our body sends us these wake-up calls. So the first thing to do, if you're dealing with a health challenge, is to start tuning in and listening to your body and asking your body, what is it that it's trying to tell you? Very often I put this question to my body before going to sleep at night and see what insights I come up with when I wake up in the morning. Or I'll take some quiet time and I'll go walk in nature, and then I'll kind of tune into my body and say, what are you telling me? And it'll tell me. Now here's the thing, the thing that we tend to do by default, which actually exacerbates the fear. When you're feeling with a health challenge, here's what we do. we start obsessing about the health challenge. We start obsessing about our health. That actually compounds the fear when we do that. So what I want you to do is to tune into your body, ask your body what it is that its message is, but at the same time, I would also invite you to think in terms of, if I had my health back, what would I do with the rest of my life? I want you to start getting excited about what you would do with your life if you had a clean bill of health. In that excitement, build on that excitement and start thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a trip to here. I'm going to look for a new kind of work. I'm going to do this. And when you start doing that, you'll realize that what excites you is so different from what you've been doing until you got the health challenge. So really what your health challenge is trying to tell you is, you're supposed to be living that life that excites you, but you've been living this life just to pay the bills, just to meet everyone else's expectations, and this health challenge has come here to wake you up. It hasn't come here to make you focus on your health. And it's not even about focusing on your illness. I'm even telling you, don't even focus on your health. Focus on your life. Focus on your reason for living. It doesn't matter what stage your illness is at. I want you to focus on your reason for living. Focus on who you love. Focus on those who love you. If you've been lonely up until that point, that could be the message that your body is sending you. If you've hated your job, that could be the message that your body is sending you. It's time to move on with your job. It's time to connect with people. So connect with other people. If you've been lonely, start to change that. Tell yourself, what would excite me if I got my clean bill of health? The last thing you want to do if you get a clean bill of health is to go back to that old life that was causing you to have this situation in the first place. And that, when the cancer healed from my body, when I was coming out of hospital, my biggest fear was going back to the old environment where I got the cancer in the first place, because I knew exactly what it was that caused it for me. So that's the journey you have to go on. You have to get to know yourself, get to know who you are. And let's say, excuse me, if your fear is not the fear, you're not fearing illness right now, but you're fearing the condition of the planet. So here's what I'm going to invite you to do. If you're fearing the condition of the planet and what's happening in the government and what's happening generally in your country, whatever it is, what tends to happen with our minds is that our minds tend to be biased. And when we go out in the world, when we watch TV, when we read, our minds look for confirmation of what we believe. So if you believe that this world is not a safe world, that is what your mind will focus on everywhere you go. For example, have you noticed that when you buy a new car, suddenly you notice everybody who's driving the same car? Or when you buy a car of a particularly bright color, which you've never seen before, you think, I want to be unique. I'm going to buy this bright orange car. But after you buy this bright orange car, you suddenly notice, wow, there's a lot of people who drive bright orange cars, because suddenly it's in your awareness. So right now, the media, and when I say the media, I'm talking about things like the news media, the big media, they have us focused on fear. If that's where your flashlight is focused on, and check back my YouTube video on my TED Talk where I talk about the focus of the flashlight. If your flashlight is focused on fear, that's what you're going to see every time you go out into the world, because that's where your focus is. And our minds are so biased that they look for confirmation. And so here's what I want you to do, is I want you to take, let's say, 5 beliefs that are not serving you. So this is how you transform fear to love. Like with the health, you transform fear to love by focusing on life, by focusing on joy and not on the illness. For if you have fears in the world, you take your 5 biggest fears. Let's say, I fear that I live in an unsafe world. I fear I live in a world that's scarce, that's not abundant, a world of scarcity. Pick your fears, just pick your fears. And then I want you to come up with the opposite of that fear. If your fear is, I feel I live in an unsafe world, now I want you to write down the opposite of that, which is, I believe I live in a safe world. And then if you feel you live in a world of scarcity where there's not enough to go around, change that to, I believe I live in an abundant world. Now what I want you to do is, after you've come up with 5 fears, pick one and say, I'm going to focus on this one. And as I focus on it, I am going to look for confirmation as I go out into the world. I'm going to look for confirmation of this truth, of this belief. When your mind is focused on it, you will find confirmation. And I want you every day to come up with at least 5 confirmations for the opposite of each of your fears. So the opposite, which means not the fear, but the love, the opposite, which is a love statement, a belief that serves you. And so I actually want you to write it down, put it into your smartphone, whatever it is, pull it up to remind you. And when you're out there, when you're watching TV, when you're on social media, look for the opposite. So for example, if my fear is that I fear I live in a fearful world, or I live in a dangerous world, or an unsafe world, the opposite is, I believe I live in a safe world that always has my well-being at heart, that always takes care of me. When I have that at the forefront of my mind, it's really true. That's what I see. When I'm on social media, I read the beautiful stories of people helping children, helping pets. When I'm here in my own neighborhood, everybody feels really friendly. Just walk out in your own neighborhood, and it is so different from what you see happening on the news. And I'd love for you to share your stories of the opposite of all the fears that people are feeling in the world. I would love to share your stories, your experiences.
片中 Anita 呢不断的提到要转念，其实就是我们经常说的正念。把恐惧的念头变成爱自己的念头，首先就是接受它，不评判它，因为评判是没有用的，只会让我们更加的害怕和压抑。像我的母亲20年前呢也是得了乳腺癌，并且呢还有淋巴转移。那经过手术治疗后呢，一直到现在还健康的活着。大部分的原因也是因为转变了心念。原来得病前呢，性格非常的压抑，也不懂得怎么表达自己的情绪，就是很爱生闷气，爱抱怨。那随着疾病的发生呢，他也学会了自我反思和自我疗愈，现在完全在性格上就是变了一个人，更加的积极和柔和了。所以疾病的发生是一次觉醒的机会，也是上天给我们的一个功课，要从中开悟。在这里呢，还要提到一位举世闻名的心理治疗师萨提亚，很多人因为他的心理冥想系列而受益终身。大家有兴趣的话呢，可以去百度下这位大师的详细资料。为了方便大家能简单易学的去练习正念，我也把萨提亚冥想系列呢做成了几分钟的小视频，会不断的更新，方便忙碌的现代人每天抽出几分钟来练习正念。祝福每个人通过正念的练习都能有活在当下的力量，可以被这股爱自己的力量滋养着。好，这期我们就到这，都会好起来的，我们下期见。